Time keeps on leaving and we keep on moving. When do we pass on our wisdom to the youth? My veteran story, lost arts discussions, fireside chats with a bourbon or two. It's time to hear the stories by our military veterans. Get yourself ready. It's the Lost Arts Podcast. The Lost Arts with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we'll be having a My Veteran Story with Marine Veteran Kris Consiglio. But before we get into the episode, are you enjoying the podcast? And go to the Lost Art website. That's the lostart.podbean.com. Go check it out and be sure to click on that merchandise tab and get some cool gear to help support the podcast and get our veteran voices out for all to hear. You can also check us out on YouTube at The Lost Art with Andrew Cox. So be sure to smash that like button and also subscribe. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, and email me directly at thelostartwithandrewcox@gmail.com. All right, with that, I got Kris here. Kris, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing awesome, Andrew. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited that you're on the program here and get to hear your veteran story. So, yeah, life is good on this end, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate it. Appreciate the invite. And, this is a really cool thing, the podcast. You got it going and, that's awesome. Congrats, dude.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks. I appreciate it. So I guess we'll start at the beginning. So go back to where you grew up, give us a little bit of history there, and then kind of what led you into the Marine Corps.
Okay. Born and raised in California. I was raised up on a small town in Central Coast, California, Monterey Bay. The town was called Pacific Grove. Pretty small town. I would just say it's definitely changed over the years, but that's everywhere. But, growing up there, it was very small town. My mom was raising 3 kids by herself. We kind of jumped around a little bit because Pacific Grove was more of a touristy area, more higher end and stuff like that. And
yeah,
but it was a beautiful area. A lot of areas, just 17-mile drive goes into Pebble Beach, and it's about 2 hours south of San Francisco Bay, so it's definitely a cool spot. Growing up, I had my older sister, about 3 years older than me, and my younger brother. He's about 18 months younger than me, so a single mom just had her hands full. And we definitely gave her testing limits. We'll just say that. So, but
very nice.
Just growing up there, it was a great place to live. Riding bikes, time in life was great. No cell phones, and kids were everywhere. As long as home by the street lights and stuff like that, you're good. So it was a good place. And then obviously teenage years growing up, I was just always focused on sports and girls. I didn't really have any drive, anything outside of that, but I knew just being in that small town, I don't know, I just felt like I wasn't going to be able to stay there. It just wasn't for me. And, it all started really just going into the Marine Corps of, high school. There's a lot of curiosity and a lot of trouble you can get into in a small town. And, when the cops start knowing your name by face and you're like, oh, it's maybe I need to change this up and stuff. So anyways, my senior year, it was 1999. My best, one of my best friends just wasn't there for football practice. And we were just kind of like, what the heck is this kid? And he shows up one day and we're like, dude, where you been? Because we didn't have cell phones. We didn't talk like that. And he's like, oh, I joined the Marine Corps. And I've seen the commercials and stuff, but at this point in my life, I'm not really understanding what the difference is in Marine Corps and the military. Like, that's my knowledge of the Marines at that point. And, I grew up in Monterey Bay. They have the Presidio, or the DLI, the defense language, all the linguists train and stuff like that. There used to be an old Army base that was demilled back in the 80s. It was one of the biggest Army bases in the country, Fort Ord. So the military presence was kind of there, but I never thought I would drive into a career for that. So my buddy's like, hey, I joined the Marine Corps. And we're like, wow, okay, that's weird. Cool. Good luck, man. Kind of give him a hard time and stuff like that. But then as football practice goes through and as every good poolee starts recruiting, right? And,
yeah,
he's like asking, just starting to probe little things here and there. And finally goes up. He's like, oh, you should join, and stuff like that. And I looked at my other friend, Ronnie, and I was like, I'll do it if you do it. And that is literally how I started my path with the Marine Corps. And
oh, that's awesome.
We all went on the buddy program, and the little hooligans that we ended up splitting up because my buddy couldn't ship from MEPS because of parking tickets or something ridiculous or something. So it was like, yeah, we're already starting off on the wrong foot, but let's get this going. So yeah, and July of 2000, I had my summer of fun with, again, just friends and girls and all that. I think my mom was ready to get me out and ship me off. So yeah, July, I stepped on the yellow footprints.
Okay. So how was that for you, that transition? Not really knowing much about the military, and then now you're in boot camp, you're thriving there. So tell me about that transition for you.
Yeah, so I mean, you got to remember this was 2000s, so I'm pretty sure I had puka shells and bleached hair and all that other nonsense, right? And I remember just getting on the bus from San Diego Airport and just looking around, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And driving on MCRD, I can still remember this to this day. Driving through MCRD, and you drive right in front of the theater, and you can see the first squad base that were right there. I think Alpha Company office was right there and stuff, right? Right across from RTR. And I remember seeing recruits, they had to have been doing like, just probably free time cleanup or something like that. They were all plastered against the windows and portals and just looking at us like prisoners. And I was like, well, this is going to be fun. And yeah, that's just kind of how it all started. I don't think I ever figured out I was actually a recruit until like T8 or something like that. Like I didn't know what was going on.
So. Wow, that's a big transition.
yeah, it was pretty wild. Those hats.
So what was
drill instructors yelling and stuff, and I'm like, what did they just say? And one comes out and he's like, stop looking. I'm like, I don't know what's happening, man. So it's just funny to remember like kind of how I started and then how I became. So it was really funny.
Yeah. And how was all the boot camp for you? Was it challenging or was it fairly easy? What was that for you like?
Physically, it was, nothing much. I was training over the summer. I was in track before graduating. So I was really physically in shape. Didn't really have a problem there. The yelling and stuff probably matched what my mom could get to. So it wasn't really a shell shock for me, but
okay.
Yeah, it was just more of just understanding it and just really learning what the military and the Marine Corps was just all at once. And just like, okay, we're doing this. So
yeah. Very cool. Now, did you come in open contract, or did you already know what you were going to do?
Oh, so when I went to the recruiter, this is how my knowledge of the Marine Corps was. He was a staff sergeant. His name was Staff Sergeant Moreno. Excuse me, and he would pick up the phone and would just say Marine Staff Sergeant Moreno, and he would say it so fast that I had no understanding what staff sergeant was. So every time I picked up the phone and called him, he'd be like, Staff Sergeant Moreno. And I'm like, hey, Staff Sergeant Moreno, how are you? It's just like, I have no idea what you just mumbled. So his pitch was, what do you do? Sports. He's like, great. It's everybody. What do you like to do? I'm like, well, I work at a gas station. I do some maintenance on some cars. And he's like, perfect. Got the job for you. So Motor T is where I went.
Okay. Very nice. All right. So then you do your stint in boot camp and everything, finish that up. And well, I'm sure you had to go MCT first, but and then off to the MOS school. And where was that at? Was that in Missouri?
Camp Johnson, North Carolina.
Okay. So you were a mechanic then?
So that's right south of Louisiana. Initially,
Oh,
he thought I was going to go drive because that's what, but it was, yeah, I went to MCT and they were like, oh, Missouri, Missouri. And they're like, no, you're going to North Carolina. And I was like, great, December, sweet. Never been there. Fun. So, yeah.
okay. All right. How was the schoolhouse there for you?
The schoolhouse was, as every schoolhouse, we got held up. We checked in December and, everyone's got to either go on leave or someone's got to stand camp guard. So
Yeah.
We all got into the gym and they're like, yep, hey, here you go. Who's going to go on camp guard and who gets to go on leave? And they started listing off names for camp guard. And my name didn't get called. And I'm like, sweet. Getting ready to exit. They're like, wait, we got 10 more names. We've got to call for base maintenance. So basically a working party for like 6 weeks. And I was like, yep.
Yeah.
So I got that one. So spent Christmas in little squad bays in North Carolina. We pulled a tree out of the woods and stuck it in a Mountain Dew bottle and decorated it with toilet paper, good old fashioned. So
very nice.
Yeah. But the schoolhouse, I learned a lot. It was something way beyond what I was even prepared for within mechanics. But, the education was there and I just picked it up, and that obviously just continued when I got out to the fleet.
Yeah. Yeah. And then where was your first duty station? Where'd you end up going?
So the first duty station, I reported to Camp Pendleton. I went to 1st Maintenance Battalion, MTM company down in Las Pulgas.
Okay.
Yeah, I checked in there. The night I can remember all this weird stuff. So the night I checked in was night. They threw me in 7th CEB or 7th ESB's school barracks over there. And I was lost for like 12 hours. No one knew where I was, or I had no idea where I was going. I was walking around just 13 area like a little lost puppy. And finally some staff like snatched me up and he's like, come here, little guy, I'm going to take you over to IPAC. And so I went over there and got orders to Pulgas, and Pulgas is just out in the middle of nowhere. It's just the pit of Pendleton and stuff. So, you got to focus on your job there, but definitely a lot of craziness that had happened out there while I was in Pulgas. So.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about your experience there in your first duty station, what you learned, where you went, and maybe a couple sea stories if you got any of those.
Oh, phew. The sea stories would probably be their own podcast. So, seriously, just that one duty. Each duty station probably can be, right?
Yeah.
So I checked into MTM company, immediately went over, was hooking and jabbing as a mechanic, then got selected to go over to the 15th MEU. And this was to chop in January of 2002, right? And this was being decided before 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
Right? And this is just wild to think about, but this is all pre 9/11. And I remember we were actually planning our Marine Corps birthday ball to go on a 3-day, 2-night cruise down to Mexico that year. So 2001, November, the battalion was going to go down on a 3-day, 2-night cruise. And we were like, oh, this is going to be epic. And then 9/11 happened. They're like, staff club, you go. So that's where we went. But anyways, chopped over to 15th MEU, MSSG 15, and did the workup with there. We developed this really tight crew out there. It was just phenomenal. We walked in and, you do turnovers with the MEUs, and we walked in this gear. They're like, oh yeah, it's like 80% readiness and, it should be fine. And we just started taking it apart. We dropped down into the 20s for our readiness.
Oh, wow.
Right. Like we were taking tires off and brake assemblies were falling off, and, wild things were happening. Leaf springs that were broken. And it's like, how do you break leaf springs? Just wild things that I think were just kind of overlooked because everyone was like, oh yeah, we didn't take the gear off, or, whatever. It just kind of happens on MEUs.
Yeah.
But we just went full shift. I think we worked 6 days straight, for months on end that we were just doing shifts, day and night crews, and
Wow.
just constant maintenance. Yeah, it was just a wild time there. And, when you're working hard like that, again, you got a young Lance Corporal, and I was a turd as a Lance Corporal. I'll admit that one. I was a very knowledgeable mechanic. I could do my job, but I was a belligerent little turd. And it was like, that's, obviously what led into my other issues. But yeah, it was just a wild time to think about. And then let's see, January 2003 is when we pushed off for our float.
Okay.
And obviously we rolled into Iraq at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were a Lance Corporal at that point, going into Iraq.
Yeah. I was a Lance Corporal for like 28 months. Obviously, you could tell my behavior was what kind of prevented all that stuff. And
yeah.
That was my own doing and stuff like that. It was just one of those, like, I was focused on my job and I had my collective, direct chain of command. And if you were outside of that, I didn't care. So even if you were an NCO, staff NCO, and you came up, you're like, hey, I need you to do this. And I'm like, I don't know you. It's like, I was just that turd. Yeah. So
it happens, man. It's no big deal. It happens. So talk to me a little bit about, you're on the MEU, you're going into Iraq, and just kind of tell us a little bit about all that.
So, to be honest, again, I was a motor T mechanic and we did some field training, but our maintenance readiness was crap. So we were super hyper focused on that. And to be honest, I don't think we were really prepared knowing that we were going into combat or in a combat environment. We were just more of like, yeah, we're just here to work on stuff. And so February, we landed in, outside Kuwait, and I get placed on LFSP. And I'm like, I don't even know what this is. They're like, just do what you're told. Roger that. So like, I get down to the well deck. They put me on an LCU and we push out to the beach. And they're like, get over there and just point your weapon that way. And I'm like, what is happening right now? And I'm just seeing like Kuwaiti, military walking around. And I'm like, am I in combat? I don't even know what's happening right now. And, just people are like, what's up? And I'm like, I'm just here. I don't have any rounds, so I don't even know what's happening. Like, what's going on? They're like, okay, dude, like, just come over here. So we were getting all of our gear off and we were moving over towards Camp Coyote. And so we all camped out there for about a month, and then, everything is starting to evolve. And we actually moved over and we're living with the Brits, with the British military guys over there. So we were kind of encamped with them. And I have a funny story with that one, but I'll share that for another time. Is we started going there, and then everyone started moving up to Viking, towards the border, up to the DMZ. And from that point, it all kicked off. And, it just seemed weird because all of a sudden we're digging scud bunkers and, it started becoming real, but you still couldn't understand it in a sense. So, we just started going through it, and I had a couple buddies, coming back, and you could tell, some had confirmed kills, some had some contact and stuff, and their look was different. And you're like, okay. So it all started kind of settling in, but it was just a Wild West. It was crazy. You can't really explain it. So, But just moving fast forward with that. Oh, sorry. Don't mean to jump.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You're good. Go ahead.
But just kind of moving fast forward as the days went through. I mean, I don't remember sleeping. As a mechanic, they were kind of holding us back, but then they started attaching us to just people. And they're like, hey, go with them. And, just make sure their vehicles are up. And we're just okay. And we got heloed into this place called LSA Viper. In the map, I'm not exactly sure, but we landed there, and then I remember my battalion XO, or the group XO, came up to me and was like, hey, did you get promoted? Now, granted, I've been like 20-month Lance Corporal, whatever, right? I was supposed to get promoted before we even got off the ship. It was February 1st. Never
Okay.
happened. And so I was like, no, sir, didn't get promoted. He's like, no. So he walks over to where our S1 Marines were and says, give me a promotion warrant now. And they're like, we don't have electricity. Like, what are you talking about? And so he's like, I don't care. So with that, I have let's see, I could show you real quick. You see in that corner?
Yeah.
That is actually my promotion warrant that is written on the back of an MRE box.
No way.
that that they hand wrote word for word. And it's funny because there's a piece of it that's extended because they jacked it up, right?
Yeah.
So it's just in beautiful fashion that they wrote out. And then they got me up that morning and said, stand up. We're doing this. We have Marines in we're all in mop gear. Some had beanies, some had Kevlar, some had whatever on their head, right? We're just standing there. And my chief warrant officer reads off this message. And my master sergeant, they pin off my corporal chevrons on my mop suit on the pocket flaps.
Yeah.
And that was, I guess unofficially, I was the first Marine promoted in Iraq. So it was kind of a funny, cool thing to just kind of think about, like, he just made him write it out. So that's kind of a fun story.
Really cool. I mean, that's a really great story. Yeah, that's cool. So what else? So you get promoted to corporal, you're in Iraq, and then lead us up past that.
So just kind of Iraq, Nasiriyah. And when we get out to Nasiriyah, we finally start setting up defense, setting up our little CP area. And the area that we kind of took it looked like a training area for either the Iraqi army or something like that. But they had all these murals, death to America and all this other stuff all over. And we occupied it, and we had to set up our defense positions all across there. And we were doing, kind of humanitarian efforts over at the Euphrates River. They were purifying water, things like that. But then, I was a corporal, recently promoted corporal. They're like, guess what, COG, what you're doing? You're going to do all this stuff. Basically was manning the holes and all other fun stuff. And those were just constant hour-long shifts and things like that. And we fabricated these holes with like bed frames and just scrap metal and tires and whatever else we can kind of protect ourselves as much as possible. So it looks really ridiculous. It looked like just a junkyard kind of sporadically spread out. And so while we were there, we had a lot of wild dogs, and they were just running all over the place and all this other stuff. And, there was this little puppy that ended up kind of hanging around me and stuff like that. And he was cool, whatever. But he used to bark at all the other dogs and chase them off. So I'm like, all right, you can hang out. And at night he would bark too, because we would get, people trying to run from the towns and come through, and he'd start barking at night. So he was really a cool thing to have.
Yeah.
And this is about, I want to say May time frame, something like that. And we've been around for a while. Things have been happening. So we've been eating MREs for like 2 months straight and drinking just hot, boiling bottled water, right, when we can get it.
Yeah.
And they did a food drop, and we got these box chows, and it had a bread roll with a can of chicken salad and like a Capri Sun and like a little small can of Pringles or something, right? Okay. So they dropped them off, and we're starting to disperse them out. And kids on Christmas morning, everybody, I don't care what age group we were, all of us were just like, and we all went internal. We grabbed our boxes and ran off, and we're just like, leave me alone and stuff. So we get our chow, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh, this is going to be so amazing. Like, no more MREs just for now. And so start unwrapping it, getting all it up, make my little sandwich, and I put it down, and I grab my drink, and I look, and it's gone.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, what just happened? That little puppy came over, snatched that thing, and ran off. I pulled my rifle out and I'm shaking. I'm like, I'm going to shoot you, you little motherfucker. I was so mad. And then he just sat there and then he buried it in front of me. And I was like,
oh,
but you know what? I came to realize, he'll need it more than I do, but I was so mad. So yeah.
So looking forward to it. And then all of a sudden it's gone.
Like mouth watering. You're just like, this is going to be amazing. It's not like doused in Tabasco just to get it down kind of thing. Just ready to go on just that little turd. So yeah, I try to remember those little stories just, to kind of counter all the nonsense and psychoness that happened over there. And those are good stories to remember. So kind of finished up there and got back on ship. We cut some gator squares for a little while, so I got to experience Steel Beach. We spent a couple days in Dubai, and of course, in true fashion, because my behavior earned me that collateral duty in Iraq of the poop burner. I got a lot of skills with that, so. Naturally when we hit ports and they're like, oh, we got guard, they're like, yep, Consiglio's on there. I'm like, oh, of course, right? So it's all good. Stood guard in the sandbox and then just, got to experience Dubai. And then we jumped back on ship, got to go down to Australia, went to Cairns, Australia for a couple days. Dumb, immature me post Iraq, just not even understanding, probably feeling bulletproof at everything. And I mean, I know that I was there and there was $1,500 spent, but I came back with a lighter. So that was what I had with Australia. And then came back.
Very nice.
Came back to went through Hawaii, stopped there a couple of days, had 4th of July there. That was awesome. Then ended up returning back, and then at that point I was total mindset was EAS.
Right.
Yeah, I had like 13 months left and I was like, this is it, I'm done. I survived whatever that was, and I'm done. Like I'm out of here.
Right.
And then God had different plans for me. So
okay. So what happened then? So your mindset, I'm getting out. And then all of a sudden, what kind of changed it? And here you are, many years later, you stuck it out for the long haul.
So when I came back, 15th MU, they do turnovers. So, we're getting ready to do our output or our turnover. Some guys are returning back to their parent units, and I am selected to stay back to ensure the turnover is done properly. So I'm like, great. My wife, who was an 0411 at the time, recently returned from Okinawa from her first duty station and was jumping on to the 15th MU and was going to go there. I had zero intentions of having any type of relationship. Like I said, it was like EAS, that's where I'm going, like whatever. She definitely was like starting to flirt with me and all this other stuff. And then, just one night was able to coerce me enough to where it's like, hey, come out and hang out. And that's all it took. So, so it was kind of funny because it was very like, I'm done. Like, this is it. And then it was like, whoa, like, this is amazing. This is the woman of my dreams. This is it. And it was like, what? And she's a Marine. Like, what the heck? What's going on here? So it was completely unexpected, but it was amazing how it all kind of worked out there. So we, got together, got engaged, eventually married. But as I left that unit and went back to my parent command, they were immediately like, hey, OIF2, get ready. And I was like, whoa, like, hold on. Like, this is a little bit much. And then my wife gets pregnant. And it was like, now this is a game changer. So, they're pressing. It's like, well, you either deploy or you get out. Because I was trying to ask for orders to PCS to open out. I was trying to, stay in, and I wanted to get out, but go somewhere else because I was like, I just came back from that, and I don't have I just met you all, and you guys want to go out and do that. Like, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't know if I'll make it. Like, I honestly felt like I didn't know if I was going to make it. So it was a scare, worry. Now I have to factor in a wife and kid, and it was like my world just quickly shifted. And it was like, I got to get out. So I ended up EASing, and I was promoted to sergeant right before I EASed. And then
hold on just a second, man.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry about that. She wanted to interrupt us here. Go ahead. You were saying you got selected or got promoted to sergeant.
Yeah, so I got promoted to sergeant right before I EAS, and this was 2004. I think it was like June or April, May 2004, something like that. Which is kind of cool because me and the major that promoted me were the only ones in tricolors because everyone was going over at that time. So I had my freaking jungles, the green OD green jungles, spit shine, pressed out, just loved my tricolors, and the major had them too. And we just kind of had that moment of like, yeah, this is kind of a last moment that we'll see here kind of thing. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Good way to leave the Marine Corps. So, I left the Marine Corps, went right in, take college courses, getting ready for a baby, and just kind of figuring out what was going to happen at that point. And then I'd say once my daughter was born in December, like about February, 2 months after, I had that unsettled goals that I had with the Marine Corps, that it was like, I really want to go back, and I think this is just something that I naturally want, and a drive and things like that. So my wife was obviously supportive, but she knew kind of as we were seeing, dual active family members struggling with, both parents deployed and stuff. So that was something of like, well, if I go back, she's definitely not going to re-enlist, and she's going to focus on staying at home and raising our daughter, and eventually both girls. But that was the decision at that point. So in May of 2005, I re-enlisted back into the Marine Corps.
Okay. And where did you end up going back to the same unit, or did you go somewhere else?
A little different because I had to. So I went to go talk to the recruiter, and they were like, "You can't go over on their TO and stuff." And I was like, "All right, well, I'll go take the ASVAB again," and redid that. And they're like, "Well, you can pretty much do a lot of these things." They're like, "Well, obviously ground units are open." And I'm like, "Well, I know how grunts and arty dudes handle lap move NCOs, so I'm going to steer away from that one." Because out of respect to those guys, because some lap mover to come in, they're like, no. So I get it. So I was looking through the MOS manual, and I'm trying to figure it out, and it's like, I could be airframes mechanic, I could be just all these different jobs, and I'm just kind of scratching my head because I'm also trying to think of longevity. I'm thinking career-wise.
Right.
And so then I come across this MOS of Expeditionary Airfield, and I've never heard of it before. And I'm like, 7011 Expeditionary Airfield. And I'm reading the MOS thing, and it's sounding really cool. And I feel like I kind of duped myself the second time around worse than the first recruiter got me. Because I had this mentality of, because the recruiter's like, hey, yeah, you guys go on Muse, and, you go forward, and you're setting up LZs. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be cool. And then they do some of that, but it was more of like, it's a different mission. So when I got to the schoolhouse, I was like, oh, this is a little different than what I thought. And I learned to love the MOS. There's just a
Yeah.
different perspective on it. But it was just a really crazy thing to shift from, just a motor T mech, being associated with the ground side, and then going to the air wing.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Wow. Yeah, and that's a huge transition. For me, I'd never spent any time in the air wing until I was a master sergeant when I finally went. It is a completely different world.
yeah,
I couldn't believe it. It's checks and balances, man. They have checklists like there's no tomorrow. It is amazing.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that was something that I definitely learned. And it was probably something in the beginning um, that I think I was against the grain on. And it was something that I probably needed to do better in understanding with, because my first duty station leaving the schoolhouse from Pensacola was Miramar. So I got fortunate enough to go down to MWSS 373. And I get down there and they're like, okay, we have this sergeant coming in. He's a lap move guy, but, their mission was different with how the MWSS works, because they do base support up until they deploy, and then it's their mission shifts. So it was staying on the deployable side, just focusing on the expeditionary gear and stuff like that. We had maintenance cycles, so I'm adopting the maintenance cycles that I had with motor T gear. And they're
Right.
like, no, we do it this way. And I'm like, yeah, my way's better. And they're like, no, we're doing it this way. And I'm like, so it was always just that. And so they're
Yeah.
like, hey, Sergeant, you're going to go up to the S3. And I'm like, sweet. So I got fapped over to the 3 for the deployment. So that was kind of a fun thing. But, being in the S3 and with that unit itself, I got to experience just kind of more of how the head shed operates, and
Mhm.
just getting to view things outside of my MOS, which I think is what allowed me to kind of respect more of, the bigger picture. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
that was good. And ended up deploying with them. We went out to Iraq again, and that was just a wild experience. Just I'll share this one was when we deployed. This time we flew in. First
Mhm.
time I came in on a ship and we drove in and all this other stuff. So different experience. And they're like, all right, well, we're going to land in at night. And the plan is to do, we're going to all jump on the vehicles. We're going to go over the cans and we're all going to get situated for the night. So my mentality is remembering the Iraq I left. So I'm sitting here like, when are we getting ammo? Like, and I'm just kind of spazzing out, and everyone's like, what is going on with this guy? So like we get off the bird, it's dark, I can't see a damn thing. I'm like high alert, freaking out. I'm screaming at people, go, go, go. And they're just like, what is up with this dude? Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of spazzing out. They get us on the trucks, we get off, people are taking their gear off. I'm still all like, I got my plate carrier and Kevlar on still. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. Just kind of just shocked in the moment. And then they give us cans of where we're going to live, these little living, containers or whatnot. And
Yeah.
I remember laying in the bed in my plate carrier and helmet, just like, what is happening right now? Like, I have no idea what's happening. And then wake
Wow.
up the next morning, and then they're like, yeah, welcome to TQ. And it's like, oh, this is not the Iraq I remember. So this is different. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a huge difference in
yeah,
comparison to the first deployment. Yeah.
yeah. And it just being at night, and it was just like, what? Yeah, it was just a wild thing to kind of encounter. But yeah, the deployment went through. Unfortunately, we lost a few guys on that one. Um, just IED stuff, and
Mm.
it's really unfortunate. But that deployment definitely was probably my last combat experienced one. Um, and then just coming home from there, immediately had orders to DI school. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, I
I didn't realize that.
slated for reenlistment, and then I was within that reenlistment was going to DI school. I was supposed to go to class 2 tag 08, and 3 weeks before check-in, I come down with appendicitis. Um,
Oh,
Yeah. I was like, I was sick for like 5 days, and it was like, my wife, you need to go to medical. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Just chugging on Pepto-Bismol and, things. I was always stubborn with medical, right? As we all are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, just went to medical. They're like, you're going. So that kind of derailed the DI school thing. Fortunately, my buddy took my orders because he was actually going to go for tackle weight. So we just swapped, and we were right there in Miramar. So that worked out. Yeah.
Okay.
And then went to DI school, and that's where we got to meet each other. So that was
That's
cool.
right. That's right. How was for you? How was drill instructor school itself? Um, was that a pleasant experience, and not like overall? What did you think?
Uh, DI school in particular, I think everyone walks in freaking like trying to over prepare. Everyone wants to like be on point because no one wants to embarrass themselves, right? No one wants to be the one. But it's funny how humbled you get really fast. Uh, just from day one and stuff, how they break it down and it puts you down in the squad bay and have you change over, and you just see everyone. I will never forget. He was on your show, Charles Henderson.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So he was across from me. I remember him standing there in DI school, and he's got his face and he's just rolling his eyes because the instructors are running, and I could start seeing everybody, just me undisciplined, just looking around. I've been in the airway, right? So I'm looking around, and just everyone's faces are just like, oh, like, what did I just do? Like, I really went back to this. So that was a memory I have of that. Um, and
Yeah,
then
that was definitely an interesting experience for sure.
yeah, and it was kind of unexpected, which was interesting. It was fun, but yeah, it's just you kind of go through the gauntlet of DI school. You're trying to learn how to be the instructor, but you're also the recruit in a sense. So it's really
Yeah.
getting you back to that environment, which I think
Hmm.
was critical. Because you saw how
Oh
just
yeah.
fleet minded we all were,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, it was good. I think drill was always natural for me.
Hmm.
I never had a problem with that. And I remember, there was a couple like Saturdays and stuff. I was hanging out with retired Sergeant Major Burton,
Hmm.
Benny Burton at the time. He was two left feet dude, so we were always spending more time on the parade deck, and it was a good time. But
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
went to DI school, finished that, and went right into hotel company.
Wow. Okay. So, tell me a little bit about you're going into your company, hotel company. How was that transition for you? And then how was your time as a drill instructor there?
um, the transition is just probably the same type of transition you get as a going into DI school. Is you feel like you're trying to be as prepared as possible, maybe over preparing. You're leaving school, so you think you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then, I checked in and picked up as the platoon or the company was coming back from second phase. So they're coming
Hmm.
back up north, and they were rolling into third phase. And at the structure of the training cycle at that point, they were just rolling right into um, was it like, finals week, final drill, prac,
Right.
everything, and then crucible. So I remember walking in, and I'm sitting here like, okay, I got to get ready, and I'm ready to learn and all this other stuff. And the J at the time looks at me and goes, "The guide knows more than you right now." And I was like, got it. Like, and it's true because he's been around the whole time. So it was
Yeah.
a humbling, moment. And he's like, I just need you to cause stress. And you causing stress as a Bobby to third phase recruits, it's like when we were bird dogging in DI school, they're just kind of like, who is this?
Yeah.
You know? And that's just kind of how it was. But I learned, little by little, the drill instructors there taught me more and more, and community, our family as hats, because that's really what you start to develop down there, is that
Hmm.
team of not only just the guys in your direct team, but your whole company, your series. You get these tight relationships with that. And you learn from each other, and you test each other, and that could be good or bad. But yeah, you definitely test each other on that. And just going through each cycle had its own level. It was fun because I had different responsibilities. I did 2 fourth hat cycles. So my second fourth hat cycle, you get a seasoned fourth hat, they know what works, what doesn't, and kind of what levels you could push and which ones you need to stay away from, and all those little things. So you start becoming more and more developed with those hidden movements, as we call them, right? So plenty of stories throughout the whole time in hotel company. Progressed to third hat, 1 cycle third hat, did a J cycle, and then did 2 senior cycles, and then got selected to be the 2nd Battalion Drill Master.
Okay.
And then I moved over at that one.
So talk to me about the responsibilities of the drill master and kind of what you did as a drill master.
So the drill master billet is really a position, a seasoned drill instructor that is to not only the performance of teaching, as the drill instructors are to instruct drill, close order drill, and how they do that. It evaluates, close order drill itself, but it also evaluates the unit leaders. And that also leads into conducting all the ceremonies. So all the graduations that are done, all the color ceremony, birthday ball season. It was like 5 or 6 different venues that we were kind of maintaining. And you in the band know well versed on all that stuff. So,
yeah.
And that's where I met, I don't know if Master Guns Dan, is he there yet?
Dan Price?
No.
Who are you talking about?
Maybe another guy. I'll have to look him up. But that's where I kind of understood more of the role of the band, because really just understanding their element that they bring into all that, but their skill set, like their knowledge. You guys are awesome when it comes down to it, to be, just going from a drill instructor mindset, and you're teaching close order drill to orchestrate music and movement. It's just phenomenal, right? So found a lot of appreciation for that. And then, as a drill master, I always took it as, what can I contribute to help others? Like, I've always been that way. I try to be that way, and I try to keep it that way. I think the billet was kind of looked at like a prima donna, kind of this, my shit don't stink person that walks around and says, you all suck kind of thing. But it was like, we had a lot of changes to where we really pushed to change the drill cards, the drill manuals. We had the challenge of MCRD was going under construction. Now they have those overhangs. So if you remember, that whole area was under construction. We lost like 75 feet of the parade deck. So we had to change all the drill cards. We had to change the whole sequence of graduation. We had to change marks and a lot of this stuff. And then, you've got all the brass everywhere looking down upon you. So it's like, it was definitely an interesting role. But I remember one story with the drill master was, I was doing a graduation. I don't even remember what battalion it was. And those early mornings, it was probably like a Wednesday right before, getting ready for family day, or maybe even a Thursday. And we get everybody out, and we've gone through graduation sequence probably a dozen times or more, right? So everyone's kind of just like going through the motions at this point. And I had the microphone, and I'm standing right in front of the reviewing area. And I usually used it every once in a while, but when I got mad, I would turn it off and just use my voice, because it was my therapy, right? It was just, scream at everybody and stuff. So one day they're going through it, and we're about to do officer center, and everyone was just being lackadaisical. So I cut the mic off, and I just started unloading, just cussing up the storm, and you motherfuckers, da-da-da. And then I see Staff Sergeant Robbins from 1st Battalion, he's a drill master, running as fast as he could, waving his hand, screaming, hot mic. And I think all of San Diego heard me just cuss out this whole battalion. And so, the depot sergeant major walked over and, thanked me for ruining his morning and all that stuff. So yeah, that was a good time.
Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah. So
Stuff happens. It
oh
is what it
yeah,
is.
yeah. But the depot was awesome. I learned a lot. I was selected as a staff sergeant in school. So when I
Yeah.
did that partial cycle and half of my first cycle, I was a sergeant. And then I selected and then continued on as a staff sergeant. And then I was actually meritoriously promoted as a drill master
Mhm.
and was selected to gunny. So I went as a sergeant, left as a gunny, and really understanding all that stuff. I understand. Sorry, my brothers that were staff sergeants for like 5 years, they all hate me. I'm sorry. Um, but it was just a progression to move up. And then when I got selected, uh, I remember I got selected July 2nd because that was when the meritorious promotion happened. And
Yeah.
we had the 4th of July 96 happen. And the day I came back from the 96, it was like, you got orders. It was just that
Oh
email
wow.
waiting for me. And I was going to MWSS 273 in Beaufort, South Carolina. And they
Hmm.
were deploying 2 months after I checked in.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
To all the listeners out there, just remember, if you're struggling, you're needing some help and assistance, the VA has some great opportunities out there. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can also text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net, click on that chat icon. Any of those options are going to be able to put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. I care about you. I know Kris cares about you. All the veterans out there care about you. We want what's best. One veteran life lost is one too many. So please reach out for help. With that, Kris, one last time, man, thanks for coming on and telling your story. Very much appreciated. To all the listeners out there, stay motivated, change your socks.